We're live now. So, okay. Very welcome to everybody seeing this very interesting webinar by Jonathan Colbert about personal liberty versus safety and celebration in space. We have a new conductor of our webinars is Maria Mo-Karzel, since Sabine Heinz wanted a well-deserved period of rest after 4 years giving our webinars. So Maria is our new conductor, leading and moderating our webinars. So first of all, I will give the floor to her because she wants to make a short introduction of our speaker, Jonathan Colbert. Maria, up to you.
Thank you, Adriano. Thank you. So yeah, it's my first webinar with you as a coordinator, and I'm glad to introduce tonight our speaker, Jonathan Colbert. He will be talking about personal liberty versus safety and celebration in space. The presentation is about liberties, and it's mainly about new human societies that are forged offward, that who will face unforgiving constraints imposed by their physical environment. Respecting those constraints, these societies will otherwise have wide organizational discretion. We propose that such societies should be derived from core consensual principles identified through discussion and debate by prospective residents. All culture and law can then emanate from these principles. We expect that amongst these principles will be a commitment to maximizing personal liberties consistent with protecting the society as a whole from existential threats and providing for all material necessities through automation. In addition, we argue that a commitment to the scientific method, including first principles, that's principles-based thinking and ever-evolving systems of systems will be wise. While many favor some sort of democratic system, we note that such experiments will have consistently failed over time. We argue that effective and sustainable democracy is possible only when the citizenry is well informed and committed to a shared vision and principles codified as a charter. We therefore propose ending birthright citizenship, instead making it into an office available to all residents through a hard-won rite of passage. The citizens can then be the government, fulfilling the dream of government of, by, and for the people. Others, whether residents or visitors, will have certain unalienable rights, but no role in governance other than a veto on changes to the charter. Much of this was accomplished in the highly successful yet largely forgotten Venetian Republic, which failed only because it underestimated Napoleon. We can add systems of sustainable technological abundance based on emerging technologies with a deeper understanding of money. In particular, given that all material wealth is some confluence of raw materials, energy, and organizing intelligence, like AI software, such societies can be structured to automatically meet the basic needs of their residents whilst preserving individual liberties. So mainly this is the abstract of what Jonathan will be talking about tonight. And to present Jonathan Colbert, so he is an author and investor. He wrote Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations, a 21st century translation and commentary, followed by A Celebration Society. He was the last seed investor in Cambridge Quantum Computing, which later became Quantinuum. He proposes raising the experimental and disruptive approach of Silicon Valley to the level of society itself, albeit tempered by consensual values. Jonathan shares his vision of science-driven model society based on ever-evolving systems, which he and his allies call a celebration society. This provides a scaffolding upon which many different societal designs can be built. The preferred design offers a comprehensive solution that celebrates human greatness to inspire more greatness, encouraging and building upon humanity's finest qualities. Dear Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria, for that excellent summation and introduction. We had talked about the idea of playing a 5-minute video, a slideshow, which was narrated by my wife, who is also a professional speaker. And I think can we do this? Can we play that 5-minute introduction? Because I think that'll provide an excellent introduction to the whole thing with a nice video component.
Yes, we can run it right now. Just give me a few seconds.
It's the vision in a nutshell.
Just a moment. First of all, I have to share. But my Zoom is making strange things. I hope it will work properly. Okay, this is the correct. And we can run it. I think I'm sharing my screen.
Yes.
People of Dogoon, welcome to the grand celebration, and welcome also to those millions of you from around the world attending virtually. Regular celebrations honor those people and discoveries that improve our lives, but a grand celebration recognizes a landmark achievement, a great milestone, or a lifetime of inspiring service. And today's grand celebration is honoring the city of Dogoon itself. Dogoon's founders had an audacious vision for a new kind of society. They named it an evolutionary society because the institutions and systems of the society itself are ever evolving. Back in 2022, Silicon Valley drove much technological innovation, but efforts to replicate the environment were not as successful. Our founders had a more revolutionary idea. Why try to recreate Silicon Valley in a new city? Why not apply its methodologies to the design of that city and its society? Unlike utopians who do not recognize their own limitations, our founders were very much aware of theirs. Having such awareness, they placed their confidence in systems and evidence-based evolution rather than enshrining their beliefs. In the natural world, evolution is often a result of random mutation. But our founders didn't want to build a society based on random chance. They wanted the society to evolve in a specific direction. And to find that direction, they had to find the collective why of the society. What did the society value? We wanted our children and their children to live in a world free from the suffering that scarcity imposes. We combine effectively unlimited clean energy with effectively unlimited, sustainably harvested resources. Then AIs and robots use that energy and resources to make the necessities of life. Because they do, we don't have to. By designing our society as a system of systems, we've been provided with the best available evidence, which we always use to guide and improve our society. In general, societal systems can become problematic over time. Venetian alleys between buildings were wide enough for the pushcarts of centuries past and included stairs. They don't really work for modern transportation. Such legacy issues exist in every nation. We'll doubtless have some of our own eventually, but at least we're aware of the problem and designing to minimize it. By building Dogoon on virgin territory, every decision regarding physical infrastructure balanced civil engineering and quality of life considerations. Further, such decisions maximized future flexibility. When we use a legacy system, it's because that's the best choice. That's how we settled on our system of government, neither a dictatorship nor a democracy. We think of it as a third way. We derived some major understandings from the long successful Venetian Republic. AIs, notably including Alpha, advise and guide us, but they shall never rule us. Unlike in totalitarian systems, we do all enjoy inalienable rights. And it's worth remembering what separates us from democracies. Only citizens participate in our government, but in Dogoon, citizenship is an earned office. It's available to all, but only upon completing the arduous rite of passage, a trial by fire of endurance, cooperation, trust, and other virtues. Those are the people who govern us. We've achieved a society in which scarcity of things that really matter is basically unknown. I'm talking about healthy food, clean water, housing, clothing, medical care, human companionship, arts, and natural beauty. That such a thing could be attained in a few decades would have surprised many people back in the 2020s. We've achieved so much, but there are more adventures ahead. The challenges of retrofitting existing societies to our model are far greater than building on virgin ground. They'll exceed the complexity of any project in human history, even the Martian colonies. Whenever an existing society is willing to make the transition, we at Dogoon and the other emerging celebration societies, we all stand ready to lend a hand. From an audacious idea to a novel implementation to a model that can inspire other cities of the world, the history of Dogoon has been one of innovation, evolution, and aspiration. Let the festivities begin.
Okay. Okay, I think it's over. Jonathan?
Thank you, Adriano. Let me take it from there.
Yeah, please.
That gave you a bird's eye view of our long-term vision. Now, I don't know any of you personally, but in my experience, most advocates for human expansion into space are libertarians. Libertarians, of course, favor a society with minimum government and maximum personal freedom in both the economic and social arenas. While libertarians may be the most vocal advocates for space development and human expansion, any such program needs to reflect the basic tenets of both liberal and conservative viewpoints as well, to take it off the drawing board and into reality for large numbers of people. In this talk, I'm going to argue that the aspirations of libertarians for freedom, along with those of liberals for everyone's basic needs being met, and those of the conservatives and the deeply religious for a common set of values that always guide the society, all of these can be effectively accomplished by combining the physical attributes of space colonies with a new approach to government and societal design. In my view, if we're to create the kind of groundswell of mass aspirations for space development and permanent settlement that you and I presumably both seek, we're going to need a model for societal design that is flexible enough to actually meet all of the different commonly held societal preferences. As you can probably tell, we call our preferred model a celebration society. Again, it's not a blueprint. It's a scaffolding in which many different types of blueprints can flower harmoniously. It's an approach that relies on the scientific method and best evidence to find ever-evolving solutions to its challenges. At its core is a set of consensually derived principles for each individual society that all the residents are accountable to uphold. It presumes effectively unlimited material prosperity based on systems of sustainable technological abundance that are provably coming into existence right now. Best of all, it does this with the flexibility from one society to another, so different religious groups and philosophies, which may be incompatible between each one to another, can have their own separate societies to call home. I'll say more about this later, but first, let's keep in mind something fundamental. Whatever your political philosophy may be, I believe that we share a common dream. It was fostered in the wide-eyed optimism of youth when we read Heinlein and other greats of science fiction and imagined ourselves living those stories. Dreams of limitless possibilities. We dream of escaping the bonds of Earth, bonds of limitation, of scarcity, of gravity itself. We dream of a future in which the wicked problems of Earth have been diminished or even eliminated by one huge change. A real space development program, not the political theater that has too often masqueraded as space programs to date. Dr. Gerard O'Neill pointed the way. I vividly remember my few encounters with Dr. O'Neill, including one of the proudest moments of my life when I helped to organize the attendance at his speech at the Humphrey Institute. It helped to raise it from their expected 50 to almost 500. My first encounter with him was in reading his book, The High Frontier, and I'll bet many of you did as well. I was mesmerized by the book's bold vision, buttressed by solid evidence, until I reached the final page and a realization crystallized for me. He had articulated the basis for a world set free from material shackles of all kinds. Tears streamed down my face as I realized this. I was not the kind of person who frequently prayed, but as I closed the book reverently, I fell to my knees and begged God to use me to help make this vision a reality. Effectively unlimited raw materials from the asteroid belt. As O'Neill so beautifully put it, we could strip mine the Earth to a depth of 1/2 mile and still not approximate how much is available. Effectively unlimited clean energy from solar power satellites, not even mentioning the nuclear and other methods available. All directed by unlimited organizing intelligence, basically software. This trifecta I came to call the 3 pillars of abundance, for when achieved, it will end material scarcity forever. That's a long time, forever. But consider, we not only will be able to make anything desired, but also remake things that are no longer useful via closed loop plasma converters with about 94% efficiency. And then we'll be able to use outer space as the ultimate room to grow. For all his gifts to us, I believe that Jerry O'Neill's greatest, the one for which he will be remembered down through the ages, is that he popularized and made believable what he called space colonies. Should faster than light travel ever be attained, it will still leave open the question of where people should build our civilizations and where we should live. Earth-like planets, while perhaps abundant within our galaxy, may well already have their inhabitants. Given the evidence we now see about life's resourcefulness in extremophile conditions, we should presume that's the case, while keeping in mind that planetary surfaces will always be a relatively scarce resource when compared to the interior surfaces of the limitless space colonies Jerry O'Neill envisioned. He wasn't the first to envision it, let's be fair, but he was the first to effectively evangelize for it based on hard science and engineering. In a world without faster than light travel, which is a world we inhabit and presumably always will, colonies are therefore perhaps the ultimate dream. They are a dream for spreading humanity and Earth's life forms and cultures throughout the solar system, like an ever-expanding cloud of twinkling jewels, each with its own unique physical parameters, its unique society, culture, and especially tourism offerings. Imagine a world of perfect ski conditions, another where the Neanderthals have their own society. These are just 2 of the many possibilities. But I'll say this, the first such colony will be an accomplishment to dwarf the pyramids. It will stand literally and figuratively as a beacon in the heavens, beckoning to humans below. Come and enjoy oases of refreshment and delight beyond your imagination. Lift your eyes, your minds, and your hearts from squabbles of scarcity to continuous abundance. That's the promise. Now, building a space colony, while a monumental physical task, is just the first hurdle. 2 far greater challenges loom. The first is engineering resilient ecosystems, something which I appreciate, but to which I can contribute nothing. Others are working on this problem. The second is designing viable, robust, and this is crucial, evolving social and societal systems. I have devoted my life to this idea, our preferred embodiment of which we call a celebration society, as I've said, and I'll discuss this in detail in the remainder of my talk. Now, why do I keep harping on evolving? Because I'm not smart enough to design perfection, and I'm confident you're not either. Nobody is. Every utopia of history has failed because it had a predetermined recipe for perfection. That perfection failed on the hard shoals of reality. Far better, I say, to accept our limitations, both as individuals and as a species. Instead, let's use the power of continuous process improvement, as developed by Mr. Edwards Deming, which enabled Japan to rise from an exporter of balsa wood trinkets in the 1950s to the world's leading exporter of consumer electronics circa 2000. They didn't do that in one big leap, folks. They did it through tiny, continuous improvements over half a century. If you like, we can look at this like a mathematical limit. Identify a big problem, identify possible solutions through experiments if you must, and a good one takes you halfway to the solution. Then try again with a little refinement. You get a quarter closer. Refine some more. Next time you get an eighth closer. Closer and closer through continuous improvements in all areas. A society based on this will ever more closely approach, while never actually reaching, the perfection that utopias promise, but they do so in an illusory manner. We will deliver. Further, each individual celebration society can modify its charter in ways that differ from others. This allows different core values to be expressed, always aligned with the consensus of the residents. For this reason, we describe this as a scaffolding for designing societies, not a blueprint. Folks, we humans are, at the core, social creatures. And much of our daily living is preoccupied with the cultures and social institutions that we create, engage with, and live in. One of the most important and far-reaching of those institutions is the government. And while governments can differ quite a lot, some have indeed considered the governance of colonies and made specific proposals. But mostly, this kind of thinking extrapolates from well-known terrestrial proposals into systems of governments in the realm of space. I'm going to argue that such systems are insufficient, but also that a forgotten system of governance, which prevailed and thrived and led the world in important ways for 800 years, offers us the foundation for a better way. Now, part of our existence as social creatures is language. When we impart common meanings to words, we can communicate. Otherwise, we really can't. For this reason, I wish to define certain words that are clearly important to space habitats. The word colonies, used notably by Dr. O'Neill, now carries certain negative connotations of extraction and oppression. Those connotations were certainly not intended by Jerry O'Neill. I recommend that instead of colonies, we use the word worlds, for space worlds would then be self-sufficient ecosystems. Even with populations as small as several hundred thousand, these can and must become self-sufficient, each functioning in every practical sense, every necessity, as a world unto itself. While space worlds may very well trade with others, and in fact, I expect tourism to be a huge industry for them, bigger even than tourism is on Earth, where it's currently, to my knowledge, the 6th largest industry on the planet. It could be their biggest. Nevertheless, self-sufficiency is vital, as they will exist in conditions far harsher than anything to be found on Earth. No environment is unforgiving than the frigid vacuum of space, not even the subarctic conditions of Mars. Society is another word with connotations. It's often used as a synonym for all the people of a nation, but for societies to be meaningful, they must define something more than a collection of people who just happen to share geography, a legally defined border, and at least one language. For example, in today's America, what do the two political extremes share other than a language, geography, and a border? While both profess to support the nation, and indeed to speak for its core values, close examination of their preferred policies demonstrates that these two cannot long exist, at least not long coexist, as the same society. They share neither a vision nor a clear set of common guiding values. And I fear for the stability of that country going forward, as do many others. A society is more than a nation state. It's a cohort of people aligned in support of specific and written principles, which they hold to be sacrosanct. We refer to such principles as a charter, to differentiate it from constitutions, which are sadly often and widely ignored when convenient. With a handful of exceptions, no constitutional republic today really functions like a charter republic as we envision it. Iceland is one exception. But in space, this is not only desirable, but necessary. In every space world, the residents will literally rely upon themselves in matters of life and death on a continuing and unrelenting basis. One explosion could destroy the fragile wall, leading to death. Given that every such space world needs a charter, what should the constituent principles be? My allies and I have considered this, and we would propose a few, while keeping in mind that ultimately the residents of each space world must have final say in such matters. We can advise no more. First, in my view, it should leave room for what I'm calling revealed knowledge, while always making all of its policy decisions based on best empirical knowledge. Let me explain. We humans have two sources of knowledge. What I call revealed, which others may call religious or spiritual or intuitive, is one broad class. The second being scientific or empirical. Scientific has the singular advantage that it can be tested and adapted to new information. Like the inner working of an engine, you don't need to understand everything about it to benefit it from it, but it's possible for anyone to understand with some effort. Scientific knowledge has been responsible for almost the totality of human progress to date. That's a pretty big accomplishment. But I'm going to say some interesting things about revealed knowledge that may surprise you. It's easy to denigrate it as the province of wishful thinkers, manipulators, even cults, and users of others. But in reality, many major scientific discoveries have been guided by revealed knowledge. Two well-known examples: the benzene ring, revealed to its discoverer in a dream, and the DNA double helix, reportedly first revealed to the Nobel laureate who discovered it in, believe it or not, an LSD journey. Speaking personally, I've had revealed knowledge imparted to me at multiple important junctions in my life. My view of it is simple. I take it seriously, and then I look for empirical corroboration. I think a society should be open to the same kind of empirical corroboration. Speaking personally, in 1967, half a century ago, I was a young teenager. I'd had a very hard life, lonely. I was at that time contemplating suicide. But before acting, thank God, I put forth a heartfelt prayer saying, if anybody was listening, show me a purpose for this life. Well, soon thereafter, I had a detailed dream, what some call a lucid dream, laid the foundation for my life's work. On another occasion, decades later, I had revealed to me what we now propose as a fourth branch of government, a meritocratic royalty, as first envisioned by the Marquis de Lafayette, 100% devoted to service and 0% to personal gain. One individual would stand as an exemplar of this, and that's Benjamin Franklin, who didn't like the word royalty, but he lived like this kind of person. Now, I've waxed a bit about revealed knowledge, perhaps uncomfortably for some who consider themselves firmly scientific. I understand if you disagree, and it's welcomed. Disagreement is foundational to our proposed scientific model, with agreed boundaries and mutual respect. It's also important in particular to understand that the scaffolding of governments I'm proposing could be implemented in a particular blueprint which completely disregards revealed knowledge, cherishing only the hardest of science. Again, a celebration society is not a blueprint. It's a scaffolding from which many diverse blueprints can be created. Excuse me. I would not choose to live in any such society, more than I would choose to live in one dedicated to supporting one race or one religion and excluding others. But I also believe that such should be accepted as proper societies amongst many others, because the self-segregation of such people is better for all than their forced integration with others. If I'm right, and time will tell, such segregated societies will, within a generation or two, find themselves falling ever further behind more exclusive societies in their progress, and their children or grandchildren will recognize their shortcomings and eventually make foundational changes. But if they don't, they're keeping to themselves, and that's all right with me. Now, let's look at all this in light of terrestrial nations. Terrestrial nations have the luxury, at least in the short term, of disregarding science and empirical evidence. Many have done so with climate studies. Space worlds will not have such discretion. A space world that ignores any evidence of a climate disaster or a crop disaster will quickly fail. Real science has the great virtue of humility. Even a vaunted theory, a word so much more robust in science than ever imagined in its common usage, can be upset by better evidence. There are even today some serious scientists raising alternative ideas to the Big Bang and adducing some evidence for it. We'll see. Importantly, everything about these space worlds must be open to evolution, as is everything of note in existence. Systems must be carefully designed and curated to support their own evolution based on ever-improving evidence. When a system functions so well that it functions basically unchanged over many years, nevertheless, it must remain open to the possibility of such change in the face of new conditions and new evidence. We will thus ever more closely approach but never attain the perfection fantasized by utopians of all stripes. In this, we assert that we are, in what we're proposing, better than utopia. Now, I'll share with you institutional specifics of our proposal. It is new in the sense that all of these elements have never coexisted before. However, from another standpoint, it's very old. All the key elements, other than the technological, are derived from the Venetian Republic, as I'd mentioned before. This republic was really amazing. It not only led the world in its creation of Venice, which stands today as arguably one of the wonders of the modern world, but also it led the world in architecture, it had the world's most powerful navy. They also, less known, had innovations in good governance, which are at once startling in their simplicity and self-evidently effective at averting perennial problems associated with all of the democracies. Now let me get into that. In our view, there should be a unicameral, that's one body, legislature, a parliament, chosen by random, staggered, single-term lottery from all the citizens. No elections, no bribing of legislators through campaign contributions. The staggered terms ranging from 3 months to perhaps 3 years, followed by an equal period of non-service in the legislature, eliminates the career politician. It also eliminates parties, feared by the ancient Greeks and loathed by the US founders, who nevertheless obviously failed to prevent the emergence of such. Further, while no structure will in and of itself fully eliminate moneyed influence upon politics, we submit that a system in which everyone's basic needs are met automatically through systems of sustainable technological abundance will be a system in which it becomes much harder to get bribes accepted, especially if the penalty for such is a felony, carrying at the most extreme the price of what used to be known in ancient times as shunning, expulsion from the society. What could be a worse penalty for someone than being exiled from the society they know and love into a world where scarcity and all it entails still holds sway? I submit not much could be worse, and therefore it should remain quite rare. In our view, there should be a Supreme Court whose paramount duty is to review every law newly passed by the legislature, as well as any regulations, should regulations be necessary, for consistency with the Charter, either approving or rejecting each such law as a whole, not amending it. The court should have single 9-year staggered terms, one justice starting each year, although initially it'll be fully populated with 9 people, obviously. But in a justice's 9th and final year of service, that person being the most knowledgeable justice serves as Chief Justice for that 1 year. We don't see the need for an executive as such is commonly considered today. Ever such executives remain at risk of demagoguery and dictatorship. Instead, we propose an administration council with councillors selected by Parliament. An even number of such councillors will be supplemented by one special member, the Sarve, a Sanskrit word meaning for all. The Sarve is nominal head of state, but in fact has great influence, yet minimal power. What is the power of the Sarve? Only one thing. He or she, and we'd like to see it alternate male to female with some room for non-binary people, that Sarve breaks the votes of the Administration Council in the event of a 5-5 tie. That's it. No other power. Royalty is envisioned as having three levels: the Sarve, Mahana Sevaka, and Sevaka. Royalty will be by invitation, extended to individual citizens who've displayed eagerness to devote themselves to lives of service. Acceptance of the offer will carry no personal benefit whatsoever, and rejection, absolutely no penalty. Royalty will exist primarily to inspire, as Benjamin Franklin and Lafayette did so well, largely by leading lavish and frequent celebrations on different levels of organization. The Sarve will nominally be selected from amongst the Mahana Sevaka, or great servants, for a single 10-year term of service. They, in turn, will be elevated over time from amongst the Sevaka, the servants. Thus, we will realize a society in which the concept of servant leadership is not merely aspirational, but fact. Likewise, by limiting all functions and powers of government to citizens, meaning specifically residents who've passed successfully through the arduous rite of passage, just one time, we will finally see emerge on Earth and in space a full flowering of the long-cherished ideal of government of, by, and for the people. I would argue, for the first time fully flourishing in history. The citizens shall be the government. Now, the Venetians had many wise ideas about government and institutions to support the same. For example, anyone who wished to assert that a crime had been committed needed to submit a report, which was secret, but never anonymous. A court examined the report and any relevant evidence. If they found the alleged crime to be false and the person alleging it to have acted with malice, they punished the person alleging it as if they'd committed the crime themselves. This simple process makes it easy to report crimes, but one will be careful in doing so. In general, we must recognize that human nature will continue in space much as it has operated on Earth. We humans will all remain flawed as individuals and even in our collective decisions. And we will need to recognize and adjust for this fact in not only our individual actions, but our systems. This leads to the principle that everything about the society must be organized to evolve. However, today's societies are heavy-handed with, in our view, excessive laws and even excessive regulations. Cass Sunstein has proposed something very interesting, that much of law and regulation can instead be accomplished through well-structured nudges. Culture, if aligned in a society according to its charter, can accomplish this. If you doubt that nudges can be really powerful and universal, consider the practice of tipping, almost universally practiced in many countries, even when the person has no plans to return to that establishment. They still almost always leave a tip. Our space societies should favor nudges over laws and use laws sparingly. I think nudges can largely substitute for regulations. We'll see. Laws should not exceed a certain word count. I would suggest 1,000 words. Likewise, the legal system should be designed such that no resident is penalized for representing themselves in legal matters, while use of lawyers is permitted for those who want help or need it. Now, it's been said that a society may be judged by how it treats its youth and its elderly, and I agree. The young should be assured that their basic needs for physical safety, loving adult guidance and protection, healthy nutrition and education, and I mean education in how to think, not in what to think, is respected. Those needs must be respected. Children should be encouraged to learn about diverse beliefs and practices in their own society and in other societies, including groups of atheists and agnostics, as well as diverse religions. This will help prevent indoctrination and the formation of cults. We expose children to various foods, various ethnicities. Why not religions as well? As to the elderly, those who are mentally infirm may need special protection. The goal of the society should allow for this, but mainly to promote healthy, wise elders who embody wisdom through decades of experience. Ideally, those elders will eventually be immortals who've achieved the ideal of health, wisdom, and enthusiasm, thereby serving to inspire others. I was privileged to have the opportunity I was invited to help design the X Prize for longevity. Why I was invited, I don't know, but in attendance were many leading researchers from governments and universities around the world. I was startled to note their matter-of-fact consensus that an average human lifespan of 200 years will be achieved in this 21st century. Their major point of contention was how long it would take beyond that to reach an end to involuntary death, i.e., immortality in the absence of accidents. Contemplate that for a moment, if you will. While some argue that science advances in fundamental ways, one death at a time, I submit that this may be more a function of the system of centralized control of research money and of power, which controls the research, rather than something inherent to human nature or necessarily part of a society. But regardless, a society of immortals need not be a stagnant one. This is a myth perpetrated by those who I would argue are short-sighted and lacking imagination. Several fields of mental exploration which remain effectively unlimited in their scope, not only now, not only for the remainder of our known lives, but probably until the last sentient being in this universe winks out. Let me give examples. Games. Already, believe it or not, there are over 70,000 separate board games in existence, the vast majority of which have been developed in this 21st century. Thousands more are developed every year. The imminent advent of fully immersive virtual reality with negligible latency will only serve to enhance the realism and attractiveness of inventing and playing and immersing oneself in such games. Mathematics. My wife, a mathematician, assures me that Gödel's incompleteness theorems assure us that there can never be an end to mathematical explorations. Literature. From a handful of verbal symbols, 26 in English alone, just to pick one language, have come countless books and articles of every description. More than 100,000 new books are published annually. While the quality varies considerably, and many more need good editing than receive it, the rise of AIs with writing and editing skills to rival the best humans will soon begin to raise the bar. There's no limit to our literary creations. Not only new ones, but endless expansions upon existing series. Music. Though it seems that every generation is fated to regard the musical creations of successor generations as mere noise, nevertheless, the emergence of new styles and artists persists. There is in principle no reason to believe that the scope of musical creations will ever end. Videos. Apart from VR, we're now reportedly in the golden age of television. I note, for example, that Pantheon, which I regard as the finest science fiction television series ever made, required advances in CGI that only emerged in the past couple of years. I heartily recommend you watch Pantheon, even if you don't like cartoons. Soon, those who love a particular character or completed series will be able to use AI to generate new content and new episodes in those series without end. Just as Grey's Anatomy reigned for 20 seasons, we may soon see the creation of new additional seasons of Star Trek, the original series or Next Generation, of Pantheon, or dare I hope, of our own forthcoming hard science fiction television series, Shadow King. I may have, and I'll say more about that in the future. I may have forgotten one or more categories. Add your own. I'll simply point out that if any one of these categories proves to truly be without limits, then the scope for intellectual exploration will also be without limits. Further, given that in any well-defined mental realm or universe, it can be explored not only physically, but in virtual reality, increasingly indistinguishable from that physical reality. From that standpoint, life itself will be without limits. Now, simulationists would argue that this is what we're experiencing right now. Okay, considering all that, it might seem that I've created a monstrous hurdle toward ever-achieving space worlds by adding a new style of government and for organizing a whole new kind of civilization. But that's not really true. One of the great and seemingly insurmountable challenges of today's terrestrial nation states is that they largely operate within legacy systems. Legacy systems constrain what can and can't be done in all kinds of ways, many of them hidden. They're usually, though not always, in existence because they met a particular need well at a particular time. But over time, things change, and when they cease functioning well, they remain in effect, often for centuries thereafter, because they have well-organized supporters whose livelihoods come to depend on them continuing, even as the vast majority of the residents might wish to replace them. Unlike any nation-state existing on Earth, space worlds will have the singular advantage of being forged tabula rasa, an empty slate. The only absolute starting constraints are those forged of metal and other materials, and of course the people within. Everything else, everything, shall arise from the will and the imagination of the residents. If you've been listening closely, you will have noted that I repeatedly use two words, residents and citizen. And I'm going to harp on something here, which I think really needs emphasis. In our view, one of the great failings of the terrestrial nation states is that they, without exception, embrace birthright citizenship. Now, lest you think I mean by this some sort of xenophobia, I emphatically do not. Instead, what I mean is simply that birthright demeans citizenship. It turns into something of little value to most who hold it, often improperly understood as to both its rights and its obligations. To appreciate this fact fully, consider that in perhaps the most important elections of their lifetimes, about half of US citizens failed to vote in 2016, 2020, and again in 2024. Repeated surveys have found that many do not know the names of their elected representatives, not just in America, but in most countries. Maybe they know the name of their president. They don't even understand the basics of how their government functions. How can such a people reasonably be expected to wisely govern themselves? I submit that they cannot. And I am confident that Thomas Jefferson, who famously opined that an educated populace is not desirable but a necessity, would agree with me. I grew up in the United States, and it holds a special place in my heart, even as I try to be clear-eyed about its failings. What I've said about the United States holds true to my knowledge in every democracy. In totalitarian systems, they have no such expectations of citizen participation or citizen rights. The leader decides, and all must cooperate under threat of coercion. The USA holds aloft a principle, which I've mentioned earlier, government of, by, and for the people. But how can this be achieved in practice in a way that endures from generation to generation and on into the centuries to come? We propose that all permanent residents will have inalienable rights. Yes, but no role in the government. And because citizen becomes a hard-won earned office, always available to residents, but never easy, then we can achieve this. And in the rite of passage I've alluded to, one would prove knowledge of the operations of government, of its institutions. One would demonstrate one's character, not just through writings, but through demonstrated willingness and enthusiasm for cooperating with other candidates in a cohort of people, a small cohort, in life and death situations. And yes, I expect people to get injured frequently and sometimes even die. And if that's the price, so be it. And every one of us will go through this, no exceptions. At the end of a cohort, the people will be asked to secretly answer one question, looking at each of the people in a circle. Would I trust this person with my life? A few black balls would suffice to reject that candidate. This time only. They'd have the option to try again later, maybe in 6 months or a year. Now, what might all this accomplish? First, as Rick Tumlinson noticed in his excellent article about families in space, which I highly recommend, while historically most families have formed via blood relations, military service can create family-like bonds, as in the well-known phrase, band of brothers. In an article of mine whimsically entitled Evil Alien Empires? No. I believe I made a persuasive logical case, at least others have told me I did, that alien civilizations, should they exist, will either be neutral or positive in their attitude toward us. There will simply be no meaningful advantage to gain from attacking us, while the risks to the attacker will be large indeed. Those same understandings will govern relations between space worlds, at least insofar as conquest of material resources. While a philosophy of conquest, such as today's Russian quest to restore the old Soviet Union, cannot be ruled out on material grounds, were one group of space worlds to seek such hegemony over another, they would in every meaningful sense be seeking control of people rather than of resources. And given the fragility of space world shells, I suspect that each such grouping will remain painfully aware that a collection of mass driver projectiles or small nuclear devices could devastate it, and that such could be set up to work even as a dead man's switch. Thus, war between groups of space worlds would be more likely to be a mutually assured destruction even than today's long-standing nuclear standoff. And I think this precludes such wars from happening. But as always, I'm open to even better thinking and even better measures for protection. Now, if space worlds will face neither military conflict nor conquest, what then could possibly substitute to create that family-like closeness? We submit that the rite of passage, as the way that the government is forged, will serve this very same purpose. We also do envision the possibility of great houses being formed, each with a purpose transcending mere blood. For example, there might be houses devoted to excellence in specific pursuits, such as biology or physics, or others to music, painting, literature. The possibilities are really almost endless. It's worth noting here that in the original Indian conception of dharma, D-H-A-R-M-A, meaning the right profession for a person based on their birth and their karmic wheel of time, it was expected that individuals would ordinarily be born into a home with the family profession best suited to them. One profession or caste was not deemed better than another. That's a recent misconstruction. It was only better in terms of the individual suitability for that particular profession. In rare cases where over time a young person demonstrated that there was just not a fit in the house they were born into, then they would be adopted into a home with a better fit for them, with a profession better suited to their passions and talents, without any loss or shame to anyone. In fact, in our society, that will be a celebration. Also importantly, we do not see citizens as superior to residents, nor royalties as superior to citizens. These are chosen roles in society, not stations. Indeed, after some period of service, a citizen might retire to again be a resident and could later again take the rite of passage if they so desire. It's worth keeping in mind that everyone will swear an oath to uphold the Charter. No one in a celebration society will be devoid of social responsibilities. Persons refusing such an oath or later disavowing it would be politely yet firmly supported in relocating elsewhere and allowed to take all transportable assets with them. To the extent that such are needed, taxes would have a limited and well-defined purpose. I want to stress something here. In most societies today, social engineering is accomplished through the use of tax money. But it should not be done as it is today through how that money is raised. The former has no direct effect on productivity. The latter, the engineering of this tax system, distorts the whole economic system. If you doubt this, just consider how in the USA real estate investing has been privileged over stock market investing for decades to the detriment of capital formation and new enterprises. Simplicity is key. Adam Smith, writing over 2 centuries ago, had 4 maxims of good taxation. First, it should be fair, meaning paid in proportion to societal benefits received by the taxpayer. Second, paid when convenient to the taxpayer. How about that? Third, certain and not arbitrary. And fourth, simple in administration, designed to minimize overhead costs and avoid discouraging productivity. As in, the tax system isn't about engineering. The revenues can be used for engineering. All these can be achieved through a flat sales tax or a consumption tax, minimized and limited by the Charter to a maximum level of, say, 15%. No other taxes need be levied. Even better might be a tiny transaction tax, less than 1% levied on all financial transactions. According to financier Scott Smith, a transaction tax less than 1/4 of 1%. Yes, that's 1/4%, 0.25, would more than offset all current US taxes, also supporting a universal basic income. He's done the research, he's written a book. This is worthy of study. If taxes are low, fair, unobtrusive, and easy to pay, both evasion and avoidance will be reduced. Further, if the culture nudges people towards a sense of a whole society rather than us versus them, attempts to evade taxes or otherwise defraud will be reduced. Further supporting this is an all-electronic money system, which can also include specific complementary currencies designed to nudge people toward societally preferred behaviors. By way of example, my wife has conceived something called meat money. Meat money would simply be required to accompany all purchases of cruelty meat made from living animals, issuing a fixed but tradable amount of this money every week to every resident will reward vegans, vegetarians, and eaters of cultured meats or vegetable-based meats. It will discourage, without punishing, the eating and raising of cruelty-based meat. Just one idea. There are many other such ideas, and I encourage you to consider the book New Money for a New World, which goes into this in depth. My wife and I edited it. Surveillance is another concern. With surveillance technologies becoming ubiquitous, what can be done? Our solution is to embrace universal surveillance as an inevitable reality, but only in designated public areas. This will simplify contracts and enhance safety for vulnerable members of society. No surveillance will be permitted in designated private areas, except with, first, full advance consent of all adults present, or second, under a court's particular warrant. Making sure that the recording isn't abused, everyone will have access to all recorded public footage at all times. And of course, the viewing of all that footage will itself be recorded. This may not be a perfect solution, but we submit that it's a workable one. To help build the wealth of such new societies, each business domiciled therein should be encouraged to donate at least 10% of its ownership to the benefit of the society. This can, however, be done via nudges rather than coercion, as a matter of culture rather than of law, using recognition and preferred treatment. Now I wish to consider reasons for rejecting each of the well-known systems of government that have been proposed for space worlds by space advocates. Since the time of the ancient Greeks, certain problems with democracy have remained well known yet unsolved. Whether direct or representational, the greatest of these has been tyranny of the majority, or mob rule. A solution to this, adopted by all nations which favor democracy, has been that of the republic. Republics have constitutions which enshrine certain principles as being above majority rule. Okay. Despite this, democracies can fall prey to other challenges. These include what was somewhat colorfully called the man on horseback, or what we would today call the tyrant, the dictator. It includes moneyed control of politics, parties, or what used to be called factions, and gridlock. Look at your own democracy, assuming you live in one. You'll see these prevalent today. Every democratic republic has been corrupted by one or more of these, and I see no end in sight. In times of great change, such as right now, many seek the certainty offered by a leader possessed of great self-confidence and charisma, offering glib solutions. This man on horseback always turns into a fascist leader, even if here it's always a he, actually, purports to have noble ambitions at the beginning. And I'm sad to say that every democratic republic in the world today, with perhaps only a handful of exceptions, is either enthralled to such a person in all but name, or perhaps just one election away from realizing this grim condition. If democratic republics cannot be immunized against their four weaknesses, and evidence to date suggests they cannot, what remains? One obvious alternative is some sort of totalitarian system, such as China's. In my observation, China is implementing Orwell's 1984. Being charitable, they may be doing so in the conviction that democracy is inherently unstable, with ample evidence to support that view, intending this system to prevail until their populace is mature and ready for self-governance. I don't know if that's their intent. I don't see such policies, but I leave that door open. Perhaps they are. But more than these, I see fascism as the ascendant system on Earth, called by many names. I wrote an essay on Medium where I described it as a chameleon. Fascism failed in World War II through a combination of strong leadership amongst the anti-Axis allies and some lucky breaks, frankly. Russia's system is fascist in all but name. And I would argue that China's system is better described by that than its proclaimed communism. Words don't describe reality. Words often serve a political purpose. The USA today, many would argue, is dancing with fascism. One particular version of fascism is that of empire. While most fascist systems seek territorial expansion, not all seek global rule. Empire does, and this will expand to include space, at least in some people's minds. Some space advocates romanticize space empires. One who never did so was Robert Heinlein, and he was wise in this as with so much else. I believe that empire, though not necessarily fascism, is an unsustainable system in the vastness of space. I have detailed my reasoning to that effect in my aforementioned essay, Evil Alien Empires No. The gist of my argument for that is that assuming light speed remains the universal speed limit, there is no logical or practical basis for imperial thinking. It becomes self-destructive. Now, travel significantly surpassing the speed of light would change many things, but even that would not affect the most crucial distinction between Earth as a closed system with the attendant closed system and scarcity thinking of Earth, and the reality of space, which is that space development effectively ends all material scarcity. Other factors than material scarcity have sometimes driven imperial and fascist ambitions. Napoleon sought to enforce a United States of Europe. Putin seeks to revive his imagined glory of imperial or Soviet Russia. I'm not sure which. What of these? While I have, I believe, definitively dispensed with the idea of forces aggregating space worlds into an empire, I see nothing keeping them from fascist rule except for one observation. Whenever people choose fascism, they do so from fear. This is why Huey Long and Charles Lindbergh came close to power in the Depression-era USA. And it's why fascism is popular in some segments there in the present day. It's also why Hitler took power in Germany, at least according to his own finance minister. Take away the basis for economic fear, and you take away the lower and often uglier motivations on Maslow's hierarchy. But how do you do this? Libertarians like to use an XY grid measuring all political systems in two axes, degrees of economic freedom and degrees of social freedom. This offers a more precise way of understanding and comparing geopolitical systems than such oft-abused and frankly manipulated labels such as liberal, conservative, socialist, and even capitalist. But it too is deficient. This is why, in part, when I ceased being a libertarian around the turn of the century, I realized that a third axis could be added, one which changes everything. If we take that libertarian XY grid, usually shown as a screen of paper facing you, lay it flat on a table, we can then add a third axis, degrees to which there are systems of sustainable technological abundance, or simply abundance. By this reasoning, individual space worlds can choose more or less in the domain of personal freedom, and more or less in the domain of economic oversight and regulation. But so long as they maintain high levels of abundance, providing for everyone's necessities, food, shelter, clean water, clean air, medical care, etc., through automated systems of production, these societies will thrive. Abundance is not merely a condition of present-day wealth. Societies have been known to contract, and as Robert Kennedy Jr. the father of our present Robert Kennedy, famously put it, GNP is a notoriously deficient measure of societal wealth. Build a prison, you add to GNP. Tear it down, you again do so. Now, I had the pleasure of corresponding with Milton Friedman, whom I credit with a well-conceived definition of freedom in the book he wrote with his wife Rose, Free to Choose. He was perhaps the most influential and prominent libertarian in history. And yes, he was. He told me in correspondence that he considered himself such. I asked Dr. Friedman a question, the answer to which I shall never forget. What would be the effect of life on Earth were we to have effectively unlimited supplies of raw materials, of energy, and of organizing intelligence? The latter basically is software. His response? It would be like Greece of the Golden Age without the slaves, spread across the whole world. He also saw no reason that a mature economy could only grow at, say, 3%, which so many economists today believe. Now, while I believe he was greatly mistaken in his notion of shock therapy for a nation, as demonstrated by the Russian example, in his understanding of a possible future of universal abundance, which he shared with Adam Smith, by the way, I believe he was correct. Indeed, an interesting aside, Adam Smith, in writing his book, The Wealth of Nations, wanted to create a future of universal opulence. That was his goal. Building on that, I wrote my book, A Celebration Society, to envision a world of systems of sustainable technological abundance, starting with one model society, duplicating to others exponentially. There's still one wicked problem, even though that model seems to be viable. Even if this is proven successful in one small newly created nation state, whether on Earth or in space, it will be extremely challenging to retrofit the model to an existing nation state. Far beyond my limited intelligence, I can tell you. But perhaps you're the person who can solve that problem. More importantly, perhaps, I'm delighted to say we have no such problem with space worlds, which all must be brand new. Now, it's worth emphasizing that our proposal continues to evolve as it ever must. No doubt there are many things we haven't thought of, and my own mistakes continue to be uncovered by others. I'm always glad when that happens. Your questions and ideas for improvement are welcome. And by the way, we give away far more PDF copies of my book than we sell. Write to me at jonathankolber@gmail.com. I'm delighted to send you one. Let me close with a teaser. For over a decade, I've wrestled with one gnawing question. How do we make our proposal immediately and personally relevant to the vast majority of people who simply have no bandwidth for world-changing projects? They're just trying to survive in the day-to-day challenges of life. The answer came to me about a year ago in a series of what I like to call downloads. It will launch next year as a new kind of tool for life enhancement, spearheading a new kind of social network focused on generosity and support rather than extraction and manipulation. If that's of interest, please get in touch. By the way, our website, celebrationsociety.com, is down for reconstruction at the moment. Murphy's Law is alive and well, I guess. It should be up again in a few days. In the meantime, you can contact me, as I said, at jonathankolber@gmail.com. Now, I'd like to suggest that we take a 5-minute intermission and then resume, and I'll be delighted to answer your questions. If any question is not answered to your satisfaction, please feel free to ask a follow-up or raise your hand and you may be called upon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. So yeah, we're gonna proceed for a 5-minute break and we catch you later on.
Okay. Quite interesting, huh?
Sorry?
Quite interesting and very dense presentation.
Yeah. Indeed.
Many concepts.
Mm-hmm.
I think I need to read that book.
Yeah. To have it all at the same time written, it's better than just listening.
We will ask the title to him. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
he's
Yeah.
sorry, I will take some water for me. Just
Sure, definitely.
seconds. I think many people are still in holiday in these days. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it was only us. That's okay.
Well, okay. So, dear Jonathan, it was a very, very interesting presentation with so many concepts that it's very hard to try to organize them in my mind. And I think I really need to read your book. So first of all, please, can you repeat the title and where can we find it on Amazon, I think?
Sure. And Adriano, sometimes it's difficult for me to keep all the concepts crisply organized. So I feel for what you're saying. The name of the book is A Celebration Society,
Okay.
and it is available on Amazon.
Okay, that's great. Okay, since we don't have questions from the audience so far, so
Yeah.
I will start myself to put there well, not exactly questions, but some thoughts that came to my mind here and there in a random style without any claiming to be organic, you know, and but
Fire
just
away.
yeah. So well, the first thing that came to my mind is that the space diaspora will allow many different social models to be implemented in space communities. Yeah, we at Space Renaissance we also were looking for an alternative terminology, not in order not to use colonies,
Mhm.
because the word colony recalls some experience on Earth, the historic experience on Earth. That's not nice.
I'm
So
sure Jerry O'Neill never intended those implications. He was a very
even
kind and good-hearted person.
in the solar system, there are no one to stall the territory like we made in the past with our imperialist efforts. However, so I think that yeah, we in our Congress in 2021, it was the third Space Renaissance in International Congress. We discussed and we agreed to use the word communities, space communities. That is maybe a better way to represent groups of people that for sure initially they will not be very large numbers, but maybe some hundreds and some thousands in the first habitats in the first yeah, we also think that the on-air model is the best one because it allows simulated gravity. That's very important in order to have a good quality of life in space and to avoid too quick changes of our physiology. And since space renaissance is based on humanist concepts, we think
Adriano, you're frozen.
Sorry, I'm frozen. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I lost a minute there. You were talking about the rotating model being desirable, and then you
Yes.
continue.
It will allow a better quality of life for sure, and it will avoid too quick changes, physiological changes. And since we at the Space Renaissance we elaborate concepts basing on humanist values, and we take human requirements as the top of our um, futurologism and imagination and designing of some solutions and so on. But however, okay, so yeah, the first concept is that many different models will be available. So in space, and also I agree that abundance of resources is the key, because you mentioned why you mentioned a reason why all utopias failed so far. And I personally, I gave another answer to this question. And my answer is because they were earth-bounded. So they tried to develop a perfect society, an ideal society, in a closed system. And closed planetary system doesn't allow real abundance of resources and energy and so on. We were working in our academy to trying to develop a concept of a new, not a utopia, but an utopia.
Sorry, what was that word again?
Utopia. Utopia.
Ah.
Utopia. That's a feasible utopia.
Hmm.
Finally, a feasible utopia, because we can do it if we expand into space. But however, okay. So from scarcity to abundance, I think is an important concept that to manage, we have to learn managing abundance, because we are not used to that. We are used to scarcity, and even the word economy, that originally means the governance of the goods of a family, in the last years means management of scarcity, economy. You make economy in your family when you pay very much attention every cent you spend, because you don't have so many. So we will need a new word in if we really succeed to access to space. We need a new word that is maybe ecotrophy or something like that. So that will manage the management of abundance. So okay, then yeah, you were talking about a society that works on debugging and improvement. So some kind of debugging problems, like we make it with a software. When we develop a piece of software, for sure it is not perfect. As soon as it is written, it is full of mistakes, and then the real work is to debug it, to take away
all of our products these days are, when they come out, they're 1.0.
Yes, until when
We're the beta testers.
my whole life was dedicated to software, and I was working in industrial automation. Therefore, I'm very used to manage a piece of software that needs to be debugged in simulation before making really working on the real things, the real factory or infrastructure or whatever, or rocket or whatever you you are developing. Software should be simulated before, And only when the simulation give good results, good enough results, you can start integrating with the real plant or things that you want to manage with your software. And yes, I think that this would be a good methodology. So, but our society is not organized like that. Normally, we use a social model until we cannot bear it anymore because it is so corrupted and bad shaped, and so that we have no other choices than destroy it and make it from scratch, make a new one from scratch. But that's a very stupid and immature way of working, because doing that, you throw away all the experience you made correcting bugs during the years. So you throw it away and you start a new one because, okay, we are younger, we are fresh, we can make it better. All the young softwareists make this. No, 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 no. No, not worth to revamp it. Better to make a new one. Okay, you make a new one and you make the same mistakes, the same fucking mistakes that the old programmers did. So, okay, I see that maybe you want to interact, please.
Well, I forgot to make a point, which was, and it's an important one. I'm glad you reminded me. We were indifferent, is the right word. We're indifferent to legacy systems, meaning that when we're creating from scratch, we want to be aware of all the legacy systems that could apply, because some of them will indeed apply and will be subject to further evolution. They won't be calcified. So as long as they serve our needs and they can be evolved as our needs evolve and our understandings evolve, why wouldn't we bring in a legacy system? We're only going to create from scratch when there is nothing that serves.
Yeah, yeah. In fact, that's the difference between a revolution and an evolution.
Yes.
Revolution.
This is not revolutionary.
Yeah, revolution implies to destroy the legacy, and evolution
don't usually end well, for at least for the small people, and really not for very many at all.
That's it. That's also why we in SRI we talk about a renaissance and not a revolution, because we hope that our society, yeah, not very optimist from this point of view, seeing what is happening in the world today, but however, we hope that this society will be mature enough to avoid further destructions and restart the development basing on what we have. That is not to be trashed at all.
Right.
Yeah, so this is, but however, I still have something more, a few things. Yeah, you said when people choose fascism is because of fear. Of course it is so. It is, you call it economic fear, I call it social fear, but I think it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Is when people think that there is no future, no opportunity to grow, no opportunity for social growth, and therefore they decide to go after some crazy guy that is the only quality of these crazy guys is that they can speak very loud and to be very to appear very decided, determined, and so they are charismatic, and they pull people around them and so on, around them to where? To another disaster. So
I'm reminded. I think it was the first time that Hitler ran. I think he got 3% of the vote, which is what I would expect for a loud, obnoxious extremist in a civilized society. But with their economy crumbling around them afterwards, well, they had a very different way of looking at their situation. And so when people, and I'm thinking of Americans, for example, but I think it's true of any country, when people think, oh no, we're different, we're exceptional. My view of that is, yeah, until you wonder where your loaf of bread is coming from.
Yeah, of course, I was thinking in this period why a people that is considered the most intelligent people in the world, that are the Israeli people, Hebraic people, Jewish people, are supporting the murdering of 60,000 Palestinians, and 30% of them are children. So this is hard to understand and to believe. And but I think that the theory of the fear is maybe applicable here, because these people feel to be surrounded by hostile forces. So they entered in a logic of extreme defense. And the extreme defense is attack, of course, and trying to destroy what they think is the enemy, that is Hamas. No? And in order to destroy Hamas, that is well eradicated in the Palestinian society, they need to exterminate as many as possible, and to push people off from Gaza and so on. So, but I don't want to enter the political choices, the geopolitical reasoning and so on. I'm only trying to reason of how the murder of 60,000 people can be approved, can be considered a minor damage in order to protect themselves from the supposed
Well,
enemies and so on.
Adriano, this is of course quite far afield from our topic at hand, and since you've touched on it, I just would like to make a couple of comments, and then perhaps we could move on to something more constructive to our larger purpose, our shared purpose.
Yes.
If you look at the government system in Israel, I think it can be argued that Mr. Netanyahu has certain survival interests. If he loses his position, he may go to jail. So he may be doing whatever he perceives that he has to do to stay in power. And he's very good at manipulating the levers and dials of power in that country. And even if the majority of the people might disagree with a number of his policies, he's in a position to play the minorities in a way, like a fiddle, in a way that he's able to continue exerting his will and staying in power. I am not certain that that is an accurate representation, but I would give odds that it is. But on a larger point here, I mean, one has to have compassion when large numbers of people, including especially children, are suffering such devastating consequences, not only in Gaza, but in many places on earth at the present time. I feel for the Ukrainians more than I can say what they're going through, and they deserve far more support than they have received.
There are other 100 forgotten conflicts in Africa.
So many. But just specifically to the Gaza situation, I do want to say this, and then we can move on. I saw a cartoon once that I thought, wow, this cartoon really encapsulates the whole situation in Gaza very nicely. And what it showed was 4 images. On the right, there was an Israeli soldier in a tank with a gun pointing toward the other side. Behind the Israeli soldier was a frightened civilian. Okay, so you've got the civilian behind the tank. Got it? On the other side, you've got a frightened civilian with the tank behind the civilian. And that is exactly how Hamas has chosen to wage this war. and they've created an almost impossible situation for any party that wants to flush them out compassionately, because a lot of the attacks have to be on mosques and schools and hospitals if there are rockets being housed there and other repositories of weapons and ammunition. It's deplorable, and it's the way it is. So I've always remembered that cartoon because that's the fundamental difference between how these two countries are waging war. Anyway, let's move on to something more constructive here. Did you have any more questions or concerns about the proposal as a whole? Anything that didn't make sense to you? Maybe I didn't explain it very well, or you disagreed with any of it? I always love to hear people's disagreements.
No, I think I have to understand better because it's very difficult to get the whole picture that you are presenting. I think I had some intuition of what you are saying, but I need a better understanding. So maybe I will look again to your lecture, because that will remain on YouTube, so you can go on all the time we want and see.
Okay.
In order to try to catch better the concepts, and for sure I would like to read your book, so I will purchase it on Amazon as soon as possible. And yes, I think that we need something. We need to think about governance of space community, space worlds, as you called. And this is also a very, very central discussion at COPUOS, is the Committee for the Peaceful Uses of Outer Space, the space branch of UN, UNUSA, where Space Renaissance International is an observer. So we are participating to all the sessions in Vienna. And the legal subcommittee of COPUOS is continuously discussing about what we will do on the moon, what should be done with the resources, the property of resources, of space resources, how should be managed. And yeah, some small advances in the discussion can be seen. For instance, there is difference and understood the difference between extracted resources and resources on place, including asteroids, not only the moon, of course. And the difference of the asteroid materials is even more important, because small asteroids can be considered a little more than materials, let me say, while big asteroids can be considered celestial bodies. So with some
Floating mountains in space.
yes. So
I think most people, perhaps including a lot of our viewers today, have no concept of how vast the amount of asteroidal resources really is. I forget if I mentioned this in my talk, but it bears repeating that calculations were done in the 70s that if we strip mined the entire surface of the Earth to a depth of 1/2 mile, we still wouldn't reach the amount of raw materials that are available from the asteroids. And that was the asteroids that were known back then.
I think maybe Jeff Bezos tried to make a calculation about that. You know that Bezos is a very, very much a fan of Gerard O'Neill model,
Yes.
and he is working for that, to develop the geolunar infrastructure, and to build in the Lagrange points and so on. And yeah, by the way, I think that this talking about astropolitics, that is a very much more mature and intelligent plan, with respect to build a city on Mars, for instance.
I mean, I loved his quip to Musk. He said, "Hey, if you think you'd like to live on Mars, first try living in Antarctica for a year because it's much more balmy."
Oh, yes, but yeah, no. My only concern is about timing because you cannot give the priority of Mars in the next 20 years. That's completely unrealistic. But well, the real thing that we have to do is to start industrializing the geolunar space. That is what we can and we need to do. Even because if we don't start doing something before 2030, civilization will implode. That is the importance of starting to make some concrete steps of civilian space development before 2030 to show to the people that there is a project, there is an alternative to fight each other on this small planet.
Why do you think we have only the 5 years? You seem to set that as a firm date.
No, well, by the way, I think that in 2021, I say 2030 was a deadline. Now, I would say that maybe we have even less time before civilization run the risk to implode, to have a total. That was also in the forecast of the National what is the name? National Security Society, National Security Society, I think NSS of the
National
US.
Space Society?
No.
Oh.
National Security is a government branch.
Okay.
In the 90s, there was a document, a paper that then disappeared completely. I have looked for that several times, but I was not able to find it again, saying that in the 5 years from 2025 to 2030, there is a very, very high risk of a worldwide, maybe World War III, or however, a big, very big social and political deflagration, let me say, likely unrecoverable. This was written in that document. And it was 40 years ago, no, 30 years ago. So I am asking myself how they could be so precise, indicating the 5 years from 2025 to 2030 for this to happen. It's upsetting, let me say.
Let's be realistic here. We're not going to get the kinds of grand aspirations that we share in effect in 5 years. So I think, from my point of view, Adriano, we have to proceed as if the lower probability, and I'm just stipulating that what you're saying is valid. I don't know it, so I can't really assess it. So the lower probability scenarios, we have to we have to presume that those lower probability scenarios will happen and buy us the time that we need to get these mega projects accomplished.
No, well, I'm not saying that we can do such a big thing in 5 years,
No.
Egyptian pyramids.
No.
But I think that a few initial steps will be enough to spark the hope. To give a sign, that we are working. We are not surrounding to the chaos. We are not surrounding to the Armageddon,
Yep.
We're working.
Yep.
That is the important thing, because I think that the people, the large public opinion doesn't have any idea of why expanding into space is so important. And it is not only necessary, but indispensable today, because that is the only way we have to make civilization to restart developing. The only way.
We quite agree. And if I may, I think this is where Jeff Bezos really has his.
Our mission of the space.
I didn't mean to try. Sorry, I was talking over you. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Okay.
The lag between the of the internet.
My friend criticize me because they say that when I start to talk, I never stop.
Are you Italian?
No, they are right, of course. I stop. However, yes, I think that yeah, we wrote that in 2009 when we founded Space Renaissance in the Space Renaissance Manifesto. It is online. I think I don't know if you saw it. That space is the answer to all the element of crisis that in 2009 they were already announcing themselves. So, okay.
I'd like to add something to talk about this because, you know, although I admire what Jeff Bezos has done with his space efforts in many ways, it's so easy to be a quarterback or what they call it, a backseat quarterback or a bleachers quarterback. I wish he was a little less deliberate and a little faster with moving ahead on Blue Origin. But I credit him with some amazing statements in that regard. He's called it his important work. He said Amazon was never intended to make him the richest person in the world. It was intended to give him effectively unlimited capital to build Blue Origin. That's why he started Amazon. And he further started some kind of a youth movement that he was hoping would create a mass movement supportive of Blue Origin's efforts. That, to my knowledge, has not done very well. It was back in 2018, that I was sitting alone one afternoon. I'm going to tell you a little story. You'll understand the point in a moment. And I was painfully aware of something. When we had set out to write my book, it took the better part of a decade to fully research and write it. But after publishing it, we had two crystal clear objectives. One was to get a cadre of experts from wide-ranging disciplines necessary to starting a new society. We've had some pretty good buy-in from some leading people from diverse fields. When the website's back up, I invite you to look at it. You'll see some great testimonials from such people. But the other one was a mass movement. And on that one, I have to say, crickets. So I did one of my occasional prayers. I basically said to God, okay, I've done what I can here in these 3 years. We've got one of the two things accomplished, but the other, no progress. Either bring me somebody who knows how to launch a mass movement, show me how to do it, or I'm just going to wait until you do, because I didn't really see what else to do. A couple months later, I had what I call my second great dream, and this, again, will be at the website describing it in detail. But the essence of the dream, Adriano, was I was on the production set of a science fiction television series called Shadow King. I was watching the first episode being produced, and I was just enthralled with what I was seeing. It was such an amazing, bold concept for a future of humanity set free from scarcity, life amongst the stars. And it even had technologies which were new to me, which really surprised me because I've been studying technologies and following technology breakthroughs for decades. And I wouldn't say that nothing passes by me, because certainly much does, but the big stuff, I tend to at least be aware of it. A couple of these I wasn't. And so I watched this. I was delighted, wondering why I was there. Then I woke up. I thought, oh, what a shame that isn't real. Went to my wife, who is a National Reader's Choice award-winning science fiction author, and said, I think we're supposed to try and make this. And then she told me something I'd never known about her. She said all of her friends, amongst them New York Times best-selling science fiction authors, have advised her over the years that she shouldn't be writing books. She should be writing for television. So long story short, we wrote a series Bible, we wrote a pilot episode, and it was a finalist in a national contest. And as soon as the AIs are ready to turn a script into a full CGI episode, it'll be ready to produce. I intend that to bring that to Jeff Bezos and say, sir, this should be your promotional vehicle. This can inspire people to see a future for themselves and their descendants in the solar system and amongst the stars. And we'll see if I can get by him. We'll make it with him or without him. It would be absolutely delightful if he chose to feature it on Amazon. And I have to believe he's looking for things like this.
Yes. Okay. To tell you the truth, I also, no, so far I only made 2 books that are philosophical essays, not novels, let me say. But I also have a novel. It is well, half developed, with about 200 pages so far. And it is interrupted because I had the Congress to manage, and I had the special lessons to carry ahead, and it's very hard to find.
Writing is such a lonely thing, and you only have yourself to hold accountable.
What I was trying to do was to initiate a new science fiction subassembly that is it is not dystopian, it is not based on violence, is not full of bang bang zip zip, you know.
We're very much of a mind on that one, my friend. Ours has those same attributes as yours.
I was trying to write a story of a normal people living in space.
So were we.
Some kind of, you know, a soap opera, but in a near future, in a 30 years future ahead, in the solar system, in things that could exist in 30 years. So just a rotating habitat in Lagrange point, just to say one thing. And of course, a little bit of wonder, you know, because science fiction. So
wonder draws them in.
Yeah, in my history, there will be an alien machine around.
Sorry, a what?
An alien machine. An
alien?
Alien artificial intelligence.
Oh, okay.
On a moon of Jupiter, Jupiter, around moon, around Jupiter, and somehow my characters will be involved in contacting this intelligence and seeing what it is there for. And
that sounds like fun. Ours is the hardest science fiction we know how to write. Everything that in there, both in our pilot and in all episodes thereafter, will be plausible based on mainstream scientists. We have an actual rocket scientist advising us on the propulsion, rocket engineer, but you know, splitting hairs. And we have a professor at Caltech, where he's retired, but he was a professor. And we have another Caltech graduate, a PhD in science, who are advising us on the science of it. So we're going to be as careful as we can be. The basic idea, in a nutshell, is to show a future 2 centuries hence that humanity can not only aspire to attain, but actually attain in a plausible manner without the hand waving of, say, Star Trek.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I would like to enter your club. and
You'd be very welcome. We love having people like you play with us.
Maybe I will send you my manuscript, my half-developed manuscript, and you will see if there is something worth to be developed. Maybe together. Why not? Okay.
Take a look.
We were we went very far with our discussion.
It's such wide-ranging stuff. It touches on the whole span of human existence, doesn't it?
Yes, yes. And let me say, I enjoyed very much your presentation and our conversation. And I think we have to make more of this thing. And you are already invited. Soon we will issue our call for papers for the 4th Congress of SRI to be held in 2026 in July next year. So we are working on to the call for paper, and we will issue, I think, maybe in a couple of weeks or weeks or 3. And for sure, you are invited to participate.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll let you know more as soon as we have materials to share.
I'll look forward to it.
Great.
Well, just thank you both of you for having me here today. It's been an honor, and it's so thrilling to be able to share these ideas with people. And of course, we never know. Not so many people today, but who knows who in the future, next month, next year, years to come, will see this thing and be sparked in some way that leads to something happening.
Yes, I want to tell you, don't be scared because we have a few attendances now, but the video will remain there, and a lot of people will see it. This is what normally happens with our videos.
Great. Could you send me a copy of the video also?
It is available on YouTube.
On YouTube, you can have it already on the channel of SRI.
Oh, so I can actually download from that channel?
Yes.
Yeah, I think from YouTube, if you can download the video, I don't know, but you can try.
Okay, great. Well, thanks again. It's been delightful and great getting to know you and share ideas.
Thank you for your time.
Excellent.
And we hope to have you, as Adriano said, maybe in the conference next year. So
I look forward to that. All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
bye.
Bye-bye.